My name is Caroline. I'm 19 years old, and I'm currently juggling 3 jobs just to stay in college. The education fund my grandparents helped create for me, my parents drained it to throw my sister Megan the Sweet 16 party of the century. They chose her one night of fun over my entire future. I spent my whole life being the responsible one, while my baby sister got everything handed to her on a silver platter. Now my parents are facing the consequences of their choice, and honestly, I'm not sure I can ever forgive them. If you've ever had family members betray your trust, hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories like mine, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I grew up in a modest middle-class neighborhood just outside Boston. My dad, Michael, works as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, and my mom, Susan, teaches part-time at the local elementary school. We were never rich, but we were comfortable enough that I never worried about the basics. Looking back now, I can see the pattern of favoritism toward my sister Megan that started almost from her birth. When I was 3, my parents had been trying for a second child for years. After multiple miscarriages and heartbreak, doctors told my mom she probably couldn't have more children. Then came the miracle baby, my sister Megan. From the moment she arrived, she was treated like royalty. I still remember my 8th birthday party. Mom and Dad invited 5 of my friends for pizza and cake in our backyard. Just 3 months later, Megan turned 5, and they rented out a whole indoor playground, hired a face painter, and ordered a custom 3-tiered cake with a princess topper that looked just like her. When I asked why her party was so much bigger than mine, Mom just said, "Megan is more sensitive about these things, sweetie. You understand, right?" And I did try to understand. I really did. I told myself that Megan needed more attention because she was younger. I convinced myself that as the older sister, I should be mature about it. But the pattern continued year after year. By the time I was 14, I was working summer jobs, saving half my earnings, and allowed to spend the other half. I babysat for neighbors, helped out at the local library, and even spent one summer selling ice cream at the beach. Meanwhile, Megan never had to work a day in her life. When she wanted new clothes, Mom took her shopping. When the latest phone came out, she found it wrapped under the Christmas tree. When I needed a new laptop for school, I saved for 8 months to buy it. The different treatment extended to everything. I had strict curfews. Megan's were flexible. I had chores assigned to me daily. Megan's chore chart mysteriously disappeared after a few half-hearted attempts at enforcement. When I got straight A's, my parents would say, "That's great, Caroline," and then move on with dinner conversation. When Megan brought home a B+, they would take her out for ice cream to celebrate her improvement. When I turned 16, Dad taught me to drive in our old family Honda. 2 years later, he taught Megan in Mom's newer SUV because it has better safety features. Little things maybe, but they add up over time. Despite all this, I excelled in school. I threw myself into academics and extracurriculars, partly because I loved learning, but also because I craved the validation I rarely got at home. I was student council president, captained the debate team, and still maintained a perfect GPA. While Megan struggled with average grades and bounced between activities, quitting whenever things got challenging. Throughout everything, there was one bright spot that kept me going: my college fund. My grandparents on my dad's side had started it when I was born, and my parents had promised to contribute to it over the years. Grandma and Grandpa Warren were always different from my parents. They treated me and Megan equally when we visited them, giving us the same gifts at Christmas, asking us both about our interests with genuine curiosity. They were particularly proud of my academic achievements and made no secret of the fact that they had established a college fund to help me pursue higher education. "Your education is an investment in your future," Grandpa would tell me, "and we want to make sure you can go to the best school that accepts you." That fund represented everything to me. It was my ticket to freedom, to a future where I could finally be recognized for my own merits, rather than constantly compared to my sister. It was my light at the end of the tunnel, the thing that helped me endure the countless moments of feeling invisible in my own family. Little did I know that even this one sacred thing would eventually be sacrificed on the altar of my sister's desires. For as long as I can remember, I dreamed of attending Northeastern University. Their business program is one of the best in the country, and their co-op program would give me real-world experience before graduation. Every decision I made throughout high school was with this goal in mind. During my junior year, I started meeting regularly with my guidance counselor, Mr. Peterson, to plan my college application strategy. He was impressed by my perfect 4.0 GPA and extensive extracurricular activities. Caroline, you're exactly the kind of student Northeastern looks for. He told me one afternoon as we reviewed my transcript, with your academic record and leadership roles, I think you have a real shot at a partial merit scholarship. We worked together on financial planning, calculating tuition costs, room and board books, and miscellaneous expenses. Even with a partial scholarship, Northeastern would still be expensive. But I knew my college fund would cover most of it, and I planned to work part-time to make up any difference. Have you talked to your parents about the financial aspects? Mr. Peterson asked. Yes, they've assured me the college fund will cover most expenses, I replied confidently. My grandparents started it when I was born, and my parents have been adding to it over the years. The day my acceptance letter arrived was one of the happiest of my life. I ran into the house waving the envelope, tears streaming down my face. I got into Northeastern, I shouted. Mom looked up from helping Megan with her science project. That's wonderful, honey, she said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Dad came in from the living room. Let me see that, he said, taking the letter. Congratulations, Caroline. We're proud of you. But something felt off about their reaction. It wasn't the excitement I expected for such a huge moment in my life. Later that week, I sat down with them to discuss the finances in detail. I'd been awarded a $10,000 per year merit scholarship, which would help significantly, but the total cost would still be around $25,000 per year after that. So with my scholarship, we'll need about $100,000 for the full 4 years. I explained, showing them the spreadsheet I'd created. How much is in the college fund now? My parents exchanged glances before Dad answered. There's enough to get you started, Caroline. We can discuss the details later. His vague response made me uneasy, but I trusted them. After all they'd been telling me about this college fund my entire life. That summer before college, I worked 2 jobs to save additional money. I waited tables at a local restaurant during the day and worked retail at the mall in the evenings. Between shifts, I shopped for dorm essentials with Mom, who seemed distracted and checked her phone constantly. One evening, I came home early from work because my shift was canceled. I overheard my parents in the kitchen discussing something in hushed, tense voices. We have to tell her soon, Dad was saying. The first tuition payment is due next month. She'll be devastated, Mom replied. Can't we figure something out? I'm trying, Susan, but we're already stretched thin with the... They stopped abruptly when I walked in. Everything okay? I asked. Just boring adult stuff, Mom said with a forced smile. How was work? I wanted to press them for more information, but part of me was afraid to know what they were hiding. Instead, I convinced myself they were probably just worried about the normal financial pressures of having a child in college. Moving day came, and I was a bundle of excitement and nerves as I settled into my dorm room. My roommate Jessica was friendly and easy to talk to. We bonded immediately over our shared love of true crime podcasts and Thai food. For the first time, I felt like I could just be myself without being compared to Megan. My first semester was everything I'd hoped for. I loved my classes, joined the business club, and made a tight group of friends. Jessica became my closest confidant, someone I could talk to about anything. When I told her about the dynamic with my sister, she was shocked. My brother and I fight sometimes, but my parents would never play favorites like that, she said. That's really unfair to you, Caroline. Hearing someone validate my feelings was incredibly powerful. For years, I'd wondered if I was overreacting or being too sensitive. As finals week approached, I received an email from the financial aid office requesting a meeting. I assumed it was routine and scheduled it for the last day of exams. The meeting was brief but alarming. According to our records, your second semester payment hasn't been scheduled yet, the financial aid officer told me. The deadline is coming up on January 5th. There must be a mistake, I said. My parents are handling the payments from my college fund. I see no record of any payment plan being established. You might want to check with them right away. A knot formed in my stomach as I left the office. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't imagine what. I called my parents immediately, but the call went to voicemail. I texted them both trying to sound casual. Hey, just had a meeting with financial aid. They said the next payment isn't set up yet. Can you check on that? Dad replied an hour later. Don't worry about it, we'll discuss when you're home for Christmas break. His response did nothing to ease my anxiety, but finals demanded my full attention. I pushed my concerns aside, focusing on my exams and promising myself we would sort everything out when I got home. Little did I know that the financial issue wasn't a minor hiccup, but the beginning of the biggest betrayal of my life. I arrived home for Christmas break exhausted, but proud of completing my first semester with a 3.9 GPA. Only one A in calculus kept me from perfect grades. As I walked through the front door with my suitcase, the house felt different. There was a tension in the air that I couldn't quite place. Mom hugged me a bit too tightly. "We missed you so much. How was the drive? Are you hungry? I made your favorite lasagna." Her rapid-fire questions and overly cheerful tone immediately put me on alert. Something was definitely off. Dad gave me a quick hug, but avoided meeting my eyes. "Good to have you home, Caroline." Megan, now 15 and just months away from turning 16, was practically vibrating with excitement when she saw me. But it wasn't about my homecoming. "Caroline, you're finally here. You have to help me plan my sweet 16. It's going to be epic." She grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the stairs. "I have mood boards in my room. Mom and Dad said I can have whatever I want." I gently extracted myself from her grip. "Let me settle in first." "Okay, we can talk about your birthday later." That evening at dinner, I brought up the financial aid office's concerns. They said the next semester payment isn't scheduled yet. Is everything okay with the college fund? Mom suddenly became very interested in serving more salad. Dad cleared his throat. "We'll sort it out, Caroline. Don't worry about it right now." "But the deadline is January 5th. That's only 2 weeks away," I pressed. "I said we'll handle it," Dad snapped uncharacteristically sharp. The conversation shifted to Megan's Sweet 16 plans, and I watched in growing disbelief as she described what sounded like a celebrity-level event. "We're booking Riverside Manor," she gushed. "It's that gorgeous mansion venue by the lake. And guess what Mom and Dad are getting Jaden Mills to perform?" Jaden Mills was a rising pop star whose songs were all over the radio. Getting him to perform at a private party would cost a small fortune. "And I'm getting a custom dress from Eliza Thompson's boutique," Megan continued. "Oh, and we're having that fancy caterer that did the mayor's daughter's wedding last year." I looked at my parents in confusion. Dad was a mid-level accountant, and Mom was a part-time teacher. We'd always lived comfortably, but modestly. Where was all this money coming from? A few days later, I was looking for wrapping paper in the home office to wrap Christmas presents when I found a folder labeled Megan's Sweet 16. Then curiosity got the better of me and I opened it. Inside were contracts, invoices, and estimates that made my blood run cold. Venue rental $15,000, Jaden Mills performance $30,000, catering for 100 guests $12,000, custom dress $5,000, decorations and flowers $8,000, photographer and videographer $6,000, custom invitations $2,000. The total was over $80,000, an astronomical amount for a one-night party for a 16-year-old. And there were still more expenses listed. My hands shaking, I confronted my parents in the living room where they were watching TV. "I found the party planning folder," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm inside me. "How can you possibly afford to spend this much on Megan's birthday?" They exchanged a look I couldn't decipher. "Caroline, sit down," Dad said quietly. "We were going to tell you after Christmas," Mom added. We didn't want to spoil the holiday. I remained standing. "Tell me what?" Dad took a deep breath. "We've had some financial difficulties this year. Some investments didn't work out, and there were unexpected expenses." "What does that have to do with Megan's ridiculously expensive party?" I demanded. "We had to make some adjustments to our accounts," he continued vaguely. Including your college fund." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What exactly does that mean?" "We borrowed from your college fund for Megan's party," Mom blurted out. "We'll put it back, of course. We just need some time." The full impact of what they were saying hit me like a physical blow. "How much did you take?" More silence. Finally, Dad admitted, "Most of it." "Most of it," I repeated, my voice rising. "Most of my college fund, for a sweet 16 party." Megan only gets one sweet 16, Mom said defensively. This is really important to her. And my education isn't important, I was shouting now. That money was for my future. Grandma and Grandpa helped set that up for me. You have scholarships, Dad countered weakly. And we can rebuild the fund. We just need time. The next payment is due in 2 weeks. How am I supposed to stay in school? We'll figure something out, Mom said. Maybe a payment plan or a student loan. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you spent my college money on a party, and now you expect me to go into debt? While Megan gets a celebrity performer and a designer dress. Your sister would be devastated if we canceled now, Mom said. Everything's booked and non-refundable. And I won't be devastated having to leave school. I was crying now, tears of rage and betrayal streaming down my face. How could you do this to me? Caroline, please try to understand, Dad began. Understand that I've always been second best, that Megan's one night of fun is more important than my entire future, that you've been lying to me my whole life about this fund. I stormed out of the room and locked myself in my bedroom, sobbing into my pillow to muffle the sound. Through the walls, I could hear my parents arguing. This has gone too far, Susan, my dad was saying. Caroline's right. We never should have touched that money. What was I supposed to do? Mom fired back. Tell Megan she can't have the party of her dreams when all her friends are having huge celebrations. You know how sensitive she is. Their voices faded as I curled into myself, feeling utterly betrayed. The one thing I thought was secure, my education, had been sacrificed for Megan's extravagance. Again, I was an afterthought in my own family. But this time the consequences weren't just emotional. My entire future hung in the balance. The rest of the Christmas holiday was pure misery. I avoided my family as much as possible, taking extra shifts at my old summer job, which thankfully had an opening during the holiday rush. When forced to be in the same room with my parents, I responded to their attempts at conversation with one-word answers. Megan seemed oblivious to the tension, constantly talking about her upcoming party and showing me photos of elaborate Sweet 16 celebrations she was using as inspiration. I couldn't even look at her without feeling a mixture of anger and grief that threatened to choke me. As soon as I had a moment alone, I called the financial aid office at Northeastern in a panic. The woman who answered was sympathetic but firm. Without the next payment, you won't be able to register for classes or access campus housing, she explained. If you can't make the full payment, you need to set up an approved payment plan by January 5th. What about emergency loans? I asked desperately. Those are limited and typically don't cover full tuition. You should come in as soon as you return to campus to discuss options. I spent the next days frantically researching scholarships with deadlines that hadn't passed, applying for private student loans, and looking into part-time jobs near campus. Most scholarships were already closed for the spring semester, and the loans I qualified for without a co-signer would barely cover a third of what I needed. I thought about calling my grandparents, but they were on a 3-month around-the-world cruise, something they'd been planning for years, and I knew they were currently somewhere in Southeast Asia with limited communication. I sent an email to their special cruise account trying to explain the situation without sounding as desperate as I felt, but I knew they might not see it for weeks. The day after Christmas, I returned to campus early, unable to bear the atmosphere at home any longer. Jessica wasn't back yet, so I had our dorm room to myself as I continued my frantic search for solutions. When Jessica returned 3 days later, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Caroline, you look terrible. What happened over break? The concern in her voice broke through my carefully maintained composure, and I burst into tears telling her everything. She listened in horrified silence, then pulled me into a fierce hug. That's not right. That's not what parents are supposed to do, she said firmly. We'll figure this out together. With Jessica's emotional support, I went to the financial aid office the next day. The advisor was helpful but limited in what she could offer. Based on your academic performance, I can increase your merit scholarship by $2,000 for the semester, she said. And you can apply for an emergency hardship grant, but that's typically only $1,500. It wasn't nearly enough. I left the office with a stack of paperwork and a growing sense of despair. That evening, I applied for a job at the campus coffee shop. my third job on top of my weekend work at a local restaurant, and my Tuesday-Thursday position at the campus library. My course load was intense, and I knew taking on a third job would be brutal, but I had no choice. Over the next few weeks, I barely slept. I would work at the library from 8 a.m. to noon, rush to classes until 4 p.m., work at the coffee shop until 9 p.m., then study until 2 a.m. Weekends were spent at the restaurant working double shifts. The physical and emotional toll was immense. I lost weight, developed dark circles under my eyes, and caught every cold that circulated on campus. Despite my exhaustion, I maintained my grades through sheer determination. I couldn't afford to lose my merit scholarship on top of everything else, but the constant stress was wearing me down. One day, scrolling through social media during a rare break, I saw posts from Megan's Sweet 16 party. The reality was even more extravagant than I'd imagined. The rented mansion was decorated like a royal palace. Megan wore a pink designer gown that probably cost more than my entire semester's worth of textbooks. There were photos of Jaden Mills performing while teenagers screamed in delight. An elaborate multi-tiered cake professional lighting a photo booth, personalized party favors. No expense had been spared. The caption on Megan's main post read, "Best night of my life, so grateful to have the most amazing parents who made all my dreams come true. Sweet 16. Blessed." But in the comments, she was already complaining. Ugh, Jaden only performed 5 songs when he was supposed to do 6. And the chocolate fountain started running low during the last hour. I threw my phone across the room, thankfully onto my bed, where it bounced harmlessly. The injustice of it all was overwhelming. My sister had gotten a party that cost as much as some people's houses, and she couldn't even appreciate it fully. Meanwhile, I was working myself into exhaustion just to stay in school. The combination of overwork stress and poor nutrition eventually caught up with me. I fainted during a morning class, collapsing in front of everyone. I came to with my professor kneeling beside me, her face creased with concern. "Someone's calling campus health services," she said. "Just lie still, Caroline." "I can't." I tried to sit up. "I have a shift at the library in 20 minutes. "You're not going anywhere except the health center," she said firmly. At the campus health center, the doctor diagnosed me with exhaustion and mild malnutrition. "Your body is shutting down," he said bluntly. "You need rest and regular meals. What's going on that's putting this much stress on you?" I broke down and explained my financial situation. He listened carefully, then wrote me a medical note excusing me from classes for 3 days. "I'm also going to refer you to the Dean of Students' office," he said. "There are resources for students in crisis that you might not be aware of." The next day barely recovered, but unable to afford missing all my shifts, I dragged myself to my academic advisor's office with the doctor's referral in hand. Dr. Marshall took one look at me and ushered me into her office. "I received an email from your macroeconomics professor about what happened yesterday," she said. "Caroline, you're one of our top students. What's going on?" Once again, I found myself explaining the situation, my voice breaking, as I recounted how my parents had drained my college fund for my sister's birthday party. Dr. Marshall's expression shifted from concern to outrage. I don't even have words. Let me see what I can do to help." She made several calls in my presence, speaking to the financial aid office, the Student Emergency Fund Committee, and even the department chair. By the end of our meeting, she had secured an additional departmental scholarship for business students and expedited my emergency aid application. "This will help with this semester," she said, "but we need a long-term solution. Have you spoken with your grandparents? If they establish the fund, they should know what happened to it." "They're traveling abroad," I explained. "I've tried to reach them, but it might be weeks before I hear back." As I left her office, I felt marginally better knowing there were people trying to help me. But the betrayal still cut deep, and the mountain of debt I was facing seemed insurmountable. I didn't know it then, but things were about to take an unexpected turn, one that would finally force my parents to face the consequences of their actions. A month into the spring semester, I received an unexpected call from my grandparents. They had just returned from their cruise and checked their messages. "Caroline, what's this about your college fund?" Grandpa Warren's voice was filled with concern. "Your email wasn't very clear, but it sounded serious." I took a deep breath and told them everything. How my parents had drained my college fund to pay for Megan's extravagant Sweet 16 party, how I was working 3 jobs to stay in school, and how I'd already had to take out loans to cover what my additional scholarships couldn't. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard my grandmother's voice unusually stern. "We're coming to see you this weekend, and then we're paying your parents a visit." True to their word, my grandparents arrived on campus that Saturday. I hardly recognized my grandfather. His normally jovial face was set in hard lines, his eyes stormy. Grandma wasn't much better, her lips pressed into a thin line as she hugged me. "You look exhausted, sweetheart," she said, examining me closely. "This is not acceptable, not at all." They took me to dinner at the nicest restaurant near campus, and I found myself pouring out everything, not just the college fund situation, but years of feeling like I was second best in my own family. They listened without interrupting, occasionally exchanging glances that grew increasingly troubled. "I never knew it was this bad," Grandma said finally. "We saw bits and pieces when we visited, but I thought it was just normal sibling dynamics." "Your father will be hearing from me," Grandpa added grimly. "That fund was set up with the explicit understanding that it was for your education, nothing else." After dinner, they insisted on coming to my dorm to see my living conditions and meet Jessica, who had become my rock through this ordeal. They stayed in a hotel near campus that night, and the next morning they drove straight to my parents' house. They invited me to come along, but I declined. I wasn't ready to face my family yet. Later that evening, Jessica and I were studying when my phone rang. It was Megan. "Caroline." Her voice was small and tearful. "Did you know Grandma and Grandpa were coming over today?" "Yes," I replied coolly. "I had dinner with them last night." "It was awful," she said, sniffling. "They were so angry. Grandpa yelled at Dad. I've never seen him like that. And they told me. They told me about your college fund. Is it true? Did Mom and Dad really take your money for my party?" The genuine shock in her voice softened me slightly. "Yes, Megan. That's why I've been working 3 jobs. That's why I might have to leave school." "But that's not fair," she exclaimed. "I never would have wanted that party if I knew. Caroline, I'm so sorry." Her apology, while appreciated, was too little too late. The damage was done. But it wasn't really her fault. She was just a kid who'd been spoiled by our parents her entire life. The real blame lay with Mom and Dad. An hour later, my dad called. His voice was subdued, almost broken. "Caroline, we need to talk. Your grandparents, they made it clear how badly we've messed up." "I'm listening," I said, not making it easy for him. "The truth is," he hesitated, then continued in a rush, "we've been financially irresponsible for years. I've had some gambling issues, and your mother, she spends when she's anxious. We've been living beyond our means, putting things on credit cards, taking out home equity loans." I was stunned. This was the first I'd heard of any gambling problems. "When Megan started talking about her sweet 16, it spiraled out of control," he continued. "All her friends were having these elaborate parties, and we didn't want to disappoint her. We told ourselves we'd figure out the money situation somehow. Using your college fund was supposed to be temporary just until I got my bonus." "But the party cost over $80,000, I said incredulously. "Your bonus couldn't possibly cover that." His silence confirmed my suspicion. "We were foolish," he finally admitted. "Irresponsible. There's no excuse for what we did to you, Caroline. Your grandparents made that very clear today." "So what happens now?" I asked. "Your grandparents are setting up a new trust for your education, one that only you can access when you turn 21. Until then, they'll make payments directly to the school. They're not going to help us anymore. And they've told the extended family what happened." The family shame was clearly eating at him, but I couldn't find it in myself to feel sympathy yet. Their choices had nearly derailed my entire future. "Caroline," he said, his voice breaking, "I know we don't deserve your forgiveness, but we want to make things right, somehow." I didn't know what to say. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. "I need time, Dad. I can't just pretend this didn't happen." After hanging up, I sat in silence processing everything I'd learned. Jessica squeezed my shoulder supportively. You okay? She asked. Not really, I admitted. But maybe I will be eventually. The next day, I received an unexpected visitor at the coffee shop where I worked. Megan stood awkwardly at the counter, looking nothing like the pampered princess from her party photos. Her eyes were red from crying, her normally perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Can we talk? She asked tentatively. When you're on break. During my break, we sat at a corner table, and Megan handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked. It's all the money I got for my birthday, she said, plus what I got from returning some of the gifts. It's not much compared to what they took from you, but it's a start. I opened the envelope to find over $2,000 in cash. I didn't know, Caroline, she said earnestly. I swear, I didn't know they were using your college money. I thought we were rich or something. For the first time, I saw my sister clearly. She wasn't malicious. She was a product of our parents' poor choices and favoritism. She'd never been taught boundaries or financial reality. I got a job, she continued, surprising me further. At the mall. I start next week. I told Mom and Dad I want to help pay you back. Megan, you don't have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted firmly. What they did was wrong. What I've been getting away with for years was wrong. Grandma made me see that yesterday. She showed me all these pictures of you working so hard in high school, all your accomplishments, and told me how you've been working 3 jobs just to stay in school, while I was complaining that Jaden Mills didn't perform enough songs. She looked down ashamed. I've been a terrible sister, and really spoiled. It was the most mature I'd ever seen her. Perhaps this crisis had forced her to grow up a little. I'm standing up to them now, she added. When Dad tried to give me money for the movies yesterday, I told him to put it toward your loans instead. He looked like I'd slapped him. Despite everything, I found myself smiling slightly at the image. That must have been a shock for him. I want to be better, Megan said simply. And I want to help fix this if you'll let me. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. A tiny crack in the wall of pain and betrayal I'd built around myself. As Megan left the coffee shop, I realized that sometimes family bonds can begin to heal in the most unexpected ways, even when they seem irrevocably broken. In the weeks following my grandparents' intervention, the consequences of my parents' actions began to ripple through their lives in ways they clearly hadn't anticipated. The family shame they'd brought upon themselves affected nearly every aspect of their daily existence. My grandparents had followed through on their promise, establishing a new educational trust fund in my name that my parents couldn't touch. They also made it abundantly clear to the extended family exactly what had happened. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who had attended Megan's lavish party now understood the dark truth behind it, and many were openly disapproving of my parents. Dad called me one evening, sounding defeated. I was passed over for the promotion at work, he admitted. My performance has been affected by everything. My boss noticed. I'm sorry to hear that. I said, not quite sure if I meant it. It's what I deserve, he replied with surprising self-awareness. Actions have consequences. I'm learning that the hard way. Mom was experiencing her own professional fallout. As a teacher in a small community, word had spread among the other faculty and parents. Her hours were cut back ostensibly due to budget constraints, but the timing suggested otherwise. Some of the other teachers won't even eat lunch with me anymore, she confided during one of our brief, awkward phone conversations. And 2 families requested their children be moved to different classrooms. The financial strain was taking a toll on their marriage as well. They'd started couples counseling, which was bringing long-buried issues to the surface. We've been hiding from our problems for years, Dad told me, using money we didn't have to paper over the cracks. Now we're having to face everything at once, and it's challenging. That was an understatement. I later learned from Megan that they were fighting frequently, sometimes late into the night. The fairy tale life they'd constructed, particularly for Megan, was crumbling around them. Their financial situation continued to deteriorate. The enormous debt from Megan's party, combined with years of poor financial decisions, had left them in a precarious position. When the adjustable rate on their second mortgage increased, they could no longer afford the monthly payments. We're putting the house on the market, Dad informed me stiffly during a call in late March. We found a smaller place to rent. It's all we can manage right now. The idea of my childhood home being sold to strangers made my chest ache despite everything. So many memories, both good and bad, were embedded in those walls. But I understood the necessity. The house had always been beyond their means, another example of their tendency to live in denial about financial reality. What surprised me most during this period was Megan's transformation. True to her word, she had gotten that job at the mall and was working there every weekend. She had also become my most consistent supporter and advocate within the family. Mom tried to buy me these expensive concert tickets yesterday, and I completely lost it, she told me during one of our now regular phone calls. I told her I didn't want anything from them until they'd made things right with you. You should have seen her face. You didn't have to do that, Meg, I said, using the childhood nickname I hadn't used in years. Yes, I did. They still don't fully get it sometimes. They'll start slipping back into old patterns and someone needs to call them out. Might as well be me since I was part of the problem for so long. Her newfound maturity and self-awareness were remarkable. At 16, she was showing more emotional intelligence than our parents had demonstrated in years. Perhaps the most unexpected consequence came when Megan's friends and their parents learned the truth behind her lavish party. The social fallout was swift and brutal. Caitlin's mom won't let her hang out with me anymore, Megan confided, hurt evident in her voice. She said our family has questionable values, and at school people are whispering about how my party was paid for with stolen money. It's humiliating. I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Megan hadn't known where the money was coming from, and now she was facing social consequences for our parents' choices. That's not fair to you, I told her honestly. Maybe not, she replied thoughtfully. But it's teaching me who my real friends are. The ones who've stuck by me through this are the ones worth keeping. Back at Northeastern, I was gradually finding my footing again. Thanks to my grandparents' intervention and the emergency aid Dr. Marshall had helped secure, I no longer had to work 3 jobs. I was able to cut back to just the library position, which gave me more time to focus on my studies and take care of my health. Jessica and I, along with another friend from the business program, found a small apartment off campus that was significantly cheaper than the dorms. Moving out of student housing was another way to reduce expenses, and having my own space away from the constant reminders of my financial struggles did wonders for my mental health. One unseasonably warm April afternoon, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a small wooden box with a note from my father, Caroline. This was my grandfather's pocket watch. He gave it to me when I graduated college, and I always planned to pass it down to you someday. I'm sending it now as a small token of how sorry I am and how proud I am of the strong, resilient woman you've become, despite our failures as parents. I know material things can't make up for what we did, but I want you to have this family heirloom now. It's the most valuable thing I own, Dad. The watch was beautiful solid gold with intricate engravings and clearly very old. I knew it was worth several $1,000s, and the fact that he was giving it to me now, rather than selling it to help with their financial problems, spoke volumes. It wasn't forgiveness, not quite yet, but it was the first gift from my father that felt like a genuine acknowledgement of my worth. Not as the responsible daughter who didn't need attention, but as someone deserving of a meaningful family treasure. As spring turned to summer, the consequences of my parents' actions continued to unfold. They completed the sale of our family home, moving into a small rental townhouse that barely had room for the 3 of them. Most of their furniture had to be sold or put in storage. It's actually kind of freeing, Mom admitted during one of our increasingly cordial phone calls. Getting rid of all that stuff we thought we needed. Living more simply. Dad had taken on a weekend job doing bookkeeping for a local restaurant, slowly chipping away at their mountain of debt. Mom had started selling her handmade crafts online, something she'd always enjoyed, but never pursued seriously. They were at long last facing reality. But perhaps the most significant consequence was yet to come, and it arrived in the form of my sister's unexpected decision about her future. 1 year after the college fund fiasco, my life looked drastically different, in many ways for the better. I was thriving academically despite the challenges, and I'd been promoted to lead student assistant at the library, which came with a small but welcome pay increase. I'd found a supportive circle of friends who valued me for who I was, not who they expected me to be. The most unexpected change, however, was in my relationship with Megan. My once self-centered sister had undergone a remarkable transformation. She was now a high school senior with solid grades and a part-time job she'd maintained for nearly a year. When she called me one evening in October, her excitement was palpable. "I got my acceptance letter from Northeastern today," she squealed. I nearly dropped my phone. "You applied to Northeastern, you never told me." "I wanted it to be a surprise," she explained. "I've been working with my guidance counselor since last spring. My grades aren't as good as yours were, but my essay was strong. I wrote about how watching you overcome adversity changed my perspective on everything." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Megan, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." "There's more," she continued. "I applied for every scholarship I could find, and I've saved almost all my paychecks from work. I'm going to pay my own way as much as possible. I don't want a cent from mom and dad." Wow, that's really mature, Meg." "I learned from the best," she said simply. "You showed me what real responsibility looks like." Our parents had reacted with mixed emotions to Megan's decision. On one hand, they were proud of her initiative and independence. On the other, they were hurt by her explicit rejection of their financial help, the final repudiation of their years of enabling her. When Megan visited campus that fall, she stayed in my apartment. We spent the weekend exploring the university, and I introduced her to my friends, including Jessica, who had become like a sister to me over the past year. It was strange but wonderful to see my two worlds converging. One night during her visit, as we sat on my small balcony drinking hot chocolate, Megan turned to me with a serious expression. "Thank you for not hating me," she said. "You would have had every right to. You weren't responsible for their decisions, Meg. You were just a kid." "Still," she insisted, "I was part of the problem. I never questioned why I got everything I wanted while you were working so hard. I was totally blind to my own privilege in our family." I smiled at her use of the term privilege, evidence of her growing awareness and maturity. "When are you going to forgive them?" she asked quietly. I took a long sip of my chocolate, considering. "I'm working on it. It's not a simple process." "I know." She nodded. "But they really are trying, Caroline. Dad hasn't gambled in months. He goes to meetings now, and Mom hasn't bought anything non-essential since last spring. They're selling the vacation timeshare next month." The vacation timeshare I'd forgotten about. Another example of their financial irresponsibility. They'd purchased it when I was in high school, used it twice, and then continued paying the fees while rarely visiting. "That's good to hear," I said sincerely. "I want them to be okay. I'm just not ready to pretend everything's normal between us." Megan squeezed my hand. "No one's asking you to pretend. They know they have to earn your trust back. I want us to be a real family someday. A healthier one." My grandparents had become my strongest allies throughout this ordeal. True to their word, they had established a new trust fund that would transfer fully to my control when I turned 21, just a few months away. In the meantime, they made payments directly to the university, ensuring my education was secure. They had also become much more involved in Megan's life, providing the kind of balanced guidance our parents had failed to give her. They treated us with equal love and support, exactly what should have happened all along. With my financial situation stabilized, I had been able to focus more on my personal growth. I started volunteering with the campus financial literacy program, sharing my story with other students, and helping them avoid the pitfalls of debt and financial mismanagement. It was therapeutic to transform my painful experience into something that could help others. My parents continued their slow journey toward earning back my trust. Dad had addressed his gambling addiction through therapy and support groups. Mom had confronted her emotional spending habits and was learning healthier coping mechanisms for anxiety. They sent small, thoughtful gifts on occasion. Not expensive items, but things that showed they were finally paying attention to who I actually was, rather than who they thought I should be. For Christmas that year, instead of material presents, They sent me a letter detailing the monthly contributions they had started making toward paying back what they'd taken. It was a small amount, all they could afford with their drastically reduced income. But the consistency meant more than the sum. One weekend in February, I finally agreed to visit them at their new townhouse. It was strange seeing my parents in this modest space after years in our larger family home. The furniture was a mismatched collection of pieces they'd kept, nothing like the coordinated decor my mother had once prized. Dinner was awkward at first, with careful conversation about neutral topics. But as the evening progressed, something shifted. For perhaps the first time in my memory, my parents seemed genuinely interested in my life, asking thoughtful questions about my studies and friends, and actually listening to my answers. After dinner, Dad asked if we could talk privately. In the small guest room that doubled as his home office, he handed me a folder. "What's this?" I asked. "Bank statements," he replied. "For the account we set up for repayment. I want you to have full transparency. No more secrets." I opened the folder and saw regular monthly deposits exactly as they'd promised. "It's not much," he acknowledged, "but it's a start." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. "This means a lot." "Caroline," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I don't expect you to forgive us right away or maybe ever fully, but I want you to know how deeply sorry I am. Not just for taking your money, but for all the years we failed to appreciate you. For putting Megan's wants above your needs. For teaching you that your worth was tied to your achievements rather than who you are." It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. For the first time, I felt truly seen by my father. As I prepared to leave the next day, Mom hugged me tightly. "We're so proud of the woman you've become," she whispered. "Not because of anything you've accomplished, but because of your strength and your heart." I didn't say "I forgive you" that day. True forgiveness would take more time, more consistency, more healing. But I did say, "I'll be back for dinner next month." It was a small step, but an important one. Back at college, I continued to thrive despite the challenges. My journey had taught me resilience I never knew I possessed. I'd learned to stand on my own, to value myself, even when others didn't, to create boundaries that protected my well-being. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed my future had ultimately led to a stronger sense of self, a deeper understanding of family dynamics, and surprisingly, a healthier relationship with my sister. While I wouldn't wish my experience on anyone, I couldn't deny that it had forged me into someone I was proud to be. As I look back on everything that happened, I realize that sometimes the people who should protect you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But I also learned that it's possible to rebuild from betrayal, to find strength in vulnerability, and to write your own story, even when others try to take away your pen. I hope my story resonates with some of you who may have experienced family betrayal or favoritism. If you've been through something similar, please share your experience in the comments. How did you handle it? What helped you heal? Also, if this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming adversity. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their family struggles. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you are worthy of respect and consideration, regardless of how your family may treat you.